Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Onigiri & Co podcast. We're on audio as usual, we're still on video, and today I'm super excited. I've got a special guest from Australia that you probably know. I'm sure you know him. It's Stewart from UAV Future. Hello!
Hey, g'day! I guess that's how I usually start whenever people... if I didn't say g'day, they'd be like, I don't know anyone from Australia. Exactly. So no, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm very excited.
Yes, thanks for coming today. I'm really happy. I'm glad you said your good day because I'm like, is that appropriate to ask? Is he going to do it? Like everybody was wondering. You did it.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm actually really excited because I've seen some of the show notes we're going to talk about, and it's stuff that's really important to me as well. It's just, it's been a while since we've caught up and had a chat, and I can't wait. So I'm very excited. So thank you for having me on. Pleasure.
Yeah, I'm really happy. And we've met back in the days. I think we met in 2019 or something like this or 18 when I moved to Melbourne.
Quite a long time ago.
Yeah, that's quite a long time ago, and I know you were not that far from Melbourne, and we flew together, and then later on, even during the pandemic, I tried to come say hi, but it was too hard with restrictions and stuff.
Yeah, it was a bit tricky.
Yeah, and now I think you're even further away from me. So.
I am about 2,000 kilometers away right now, so I'm sure we can get into this later. But I did a huge sea change. A lot has changed in my life, and I really loved it down there. But we are a long way away, so you're gonna have to come up to Queensland if you want to catch up for a flight.
Yeah, I was there recently. I was in June. I went to visit a friend, same that I had not seen for ages in Gold Coast. If I had known, I would have messaged you.
Yeah,
but that's okay. It's good. We're catching up today.
Yes, and this is it. The power of the internet.
Yes. How lucky are we to have technology?
Yes, that's very good.
What I usually do on this podcast is, in case some people from the audience don't know you, because I don't know how it's possible, but it can happen. I'm making the guests introduce themselves, whatever they want to talk about in terms of FPV or not FPV. It's really free introduction, so Go for it.
Fantastic. So look, my name's Stu. A lot of people call me UAV Futures, and I am really passionate, and what I do as my career and what I focus on now is just getting people flying around with FPV drones. If you're into this podcast, will they know what drones are as much as it is about drones as much as it is other things as well?
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's mainly drones and then other things as well.
Sure. So I'm really into drones. I've been into them for a long time. I'm sure we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit as well. But my main aim is to help people get flying. I make videos on YouTube. Go check it out, subscribe, watch all those ads, all that good stuff. I just want to help people get flying, and it's what I quit my teaching job, and I feel like I've been in FPV from the start. Like before, it was really, not that it's mainstream now, but I was there when at the very sort of beginning of when these little quadcopters became available to the public. And that's it. I'm other things I'm into. I love gardening. I love being outside. I've got a young family. And probably something that I'm really passionate about. It's always been helping people. So whether that be helping kids learn when I was a teacher, or just helping people build drones, or helping people improve their life in a way, because drones were such an instrumental part in changing and improving my life, that I want to share and give that back to as many people as possible. That's sort of my mission and what I'm really passionate about doing.
Yeah, it's not surprising that you were a teacher, and then the way you organize your channel and what you wanted to bring to people was also very educational. So I guess that was probably natural for you to be like, I just don't want to put flight with drones. I want to help people understand things, concepts and products and things like this. So that's
I would say a big part for me is when I first saw it, it's amazing how so many coincidences can line up to lead people to have certain events happen, like us right here, right now, like all the events that must have lined up throughout, everything that's happened to have us sitting here chatting right now on this podcast. It's pretty crazy. And one of a big one for me was this. I saw some videos and it's like, man, this looks kind of cool. I'm going to get into this. So I went to I Googled and said, there's a hobby shop. And you're not going to believe this. The hobby shop was like 30 meters down the road. I didn't know that. Like it was called Toy World, but in the back of Toy World, there was like an actual hobby store. And I went in there and I was like, look, I've seen these drones. This is about 2015. So no one really knew too much about FPV. And I was like, hey, I've seen these FPV drones. Do you have any of them? What's that? And he's like, nah, mate, no one's really doing that thing. Yeah, it's a bit of a joke. If you want to get a community you're going to have to make one yourself. You should get one of these big gas planes or something. That's what he was talking about for meeting up and flying. And I didn't really want to do that. And I thought, well, and I looked around and there was no community. There was no FPV group or not even Facebook groups or anything like that. And so I thought, I had to, it was a lot harder to learn things. And as I was learning those things, I wanted to share those just with other people as well. Even if they were just little goals like, hey, look, I discovered this, or I discovered this when I'm soldering. And I think something that I've used for a long time that I like to just use a little, not exclusive, but an insight into my psyche of, I always think, oh yeah, I feel like I populated that tip was when you're soldering and like using blue tack. I was like, man, I've got to find some better. I feel like, yes, if you look back, you'll find me, I believe, was the first person using blue tack, because I was like, what are these helping hand things? This is junk. Where's like something I can really use here? And I was like, oh, I got some blue tack. And then I feel like it's common knowledge now. That's what a lot of people just use.
It is. And it's so funny because I heard it from Snake FPV.
Okay.
And he was like, oh yeah, I use blue tack. And I'm sure it's because he heard it from you, because you guys started your YouTube channels at the same time.
Yes,
and
yes. Big shout out to Snake too. I really appreciate him. I think he's a cool dude, and I've met up with him and gone flying as well. I don't know if he's still making content. It's been a little while since I've chatted to him, but he was a lot of fun when I did meet up with him. So there you go. If you want to see some cool OG videos, go check out Snake FPV on YouTube.
Definitely, yeah.
After this podcast, though, you got to listen to this entire podcast.
Yes, don't get sidetracked by people. Because for people who don't know, we're going to talk about a bit of ADHD and diagnosis like this, and you are officially diagnosed. I'm not, but I have suspicions. So be ready for tangents in the episode. Because
there will be a few tangents, and that's something I really want to talk about as well. So I'm really passionate about mental health, about getting outside. Like, I didn't know that's what drones were doing for me, but they really were like a bit of therapy for me. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, they're talking about drones, but we're also going to be talking about ADD and mental health and struggles and all those sorts of things. So we've got some great stuff coming up that I am not ashamed to talk about. And I hope that if you're listening to this, you might be able to, either it's entertaining or you can get something out of it. And it could be the start of, it could be a catalyst or just a little building block that you can use to help people in their lives to move forward. Because times are tough, like 2023, and I've been through some rough years, and it's all about sharing the love and the kindness. And I always end my videos actually at the end of them. I feel like I always look at the camera and say, and most importantly, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself, and I'm stuffing this up. Be kind to each other, and most importantly, be kind to yourself, because I feel like that's the thing we don't do nearly enough.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's easier sometimes to say kind things to others than in our own head. We are not speaking to ourselves with kind words. Like, it's so easy to think something like, oh, you did it again, you stupid, when you're doing things, and it's not kind. We would never say that to our friends,
Yeah.
So,
It's really hard with ADD as well. Like when we talk about that in a little bit, that you are so used to doing so many things that you just automatically start taking the blame for things and blaming yourself for things that, one, sometimes you have no control over doing that, and number two, sometimes it's not even you who did that, but you take the blame. Like, oh man, did I lose the keys again? And you're like, it must have been me. But you're so used to that being you, but even when it's not you, sometimes you are already blaming yourself for things that you haven't even done.
Yeah. Actually, since we've naturally started talking about this, I don't mind shuffling around the plan that we had. So when how can I say? So you've had your YouTube channel for a very long time. And at some stage you started having some struggles and you were not sure what was going on. And obviously we're going to discover
the whole story of that? Or what would you like me to focus on? Anything in particular? We'll start from the start. I can start from the start if you'd like to get a bit of background, and we can move into where we're up to now and ADHD and
exactly. That's what I was thinking might happen. Like, how is it until you started struggling and discovered why you were struggling? Yeah.
So I think something that I want to say before I get into this is, like, I didn't know I had ADHD, and I only was just diagnosed at 37 years old. And I am so grateful that I have ADHD, and I am also it's also very annoying because it can give you like some great abilities, but also it comes with some terrible cons as well. So I was teaching, and people who, here's a little stat for you, people who have ADHD that are unmedicated are 6 times more likely to have depression and anxiety if it's left untreated. And it can be a slow build up, and it's quite common for people who have ADHD to develop that at some point in their life. And for me, I I was doing teaching. It was great. I discovered drones, and drones are like, this is fantastic. And there was like the ADHD people have an ability that other neurotypical people don't have, which is they can have an extreme hyper focus. So, and so much so it can be the detriment to other things that are going on in their life. And it drives my wife absolutely crazy when I get focused on a goal. And very like a real quick little segue tangent. Like I was building like a racing simulator driving sort of thing. And it wasn't so much about playing it. I just was like into the process of building it. And I can remember standing inside. This is before I was diagnosed, and it's just over here actually. And it was like a proper like a car seat, and it was all connected and can move, and it was like all electric. It's very cool. But I have like the angle grinder out, just standing there with a pair of shorts on, like cutting things out, like not in the lounge room, but in this space room, which is kind of like the kitchen area. And I was like, man, what is this? This is crazy, and hot plastic spitting everywhere. But I was so focused on building that it's really the detriment of I should have probably been like, can we organize dinner? Like it's 5 o'clock. We've got to take the kids to dance lessons or swimming or something. So when you got ADD, you can get extreme hyper focus. Now for me, you get excited. So where I'm at school, I'm teaching, things are great for a couple of years. I discover drones and I think, man, these are pretty cool. And they do something. I've never done anything RC before. I've never been into remote control cars or planes or anything like that. And there was something about just the dopamine hit you get from not only learning with drones, but then also like you can see your skills get progressing. It's exploring places. It was like you're getting outdoors, you're meeting people. It was intense. And on top of that, I was also getting, I guess, very large dopamine hits. And this is something where I have really struggled with. And it's only from talking to like therapists or psychologists and discussing these things is you get a lot of dopamine from social media as well, but it can be like a double-edged sword. So when you start getting views and you start getting numbers, and some things really like I'm very fortunate. UAV Futures really blew up for me. Like it started to take off. It started to do well. I was able to quit my job. And I know for when I was leading up, like I was teaching and I would get home from my teaching job. And I think I'm naturally a good, kind teacher to my students, but I wasn't as motivated to do the other, like the planning or the marking or any of that sort of garbage that teachers have to do, all that data sort of stuff. So I was getting home, didn't have any kids of my own or anything like that. And I was just working on drones for like, I didn't watch TV for 2 years. Like that's how hyper obsessed I was for drones while I was still going to my normal teaching job. And I'm just working on these drones all the time. I'm getting like heaps of views. The content's starting to rack up. We're building a library. You're getting recognition. We're getting dopamine. There's a large dump of dopamine that's coming in when you're starting to see these numbers. And I was feeling really good about myself. And it was quite, what I didn't realize at the time was my identity was becoming UAV Futures. I wasn't just Stewart. My identity was really merging with this online persona that I had. And I think a lot of YouTube creators will struggle with this as well. And you can only, it's really hard to feel and know when you're in it until you get to the other side of it. And you can look back and be like, man, yeah, that's right. Those numbers, those views, that's not a representation of the person that I am. What's really important is, am I a kind individual? Am I being a good family man? Am I looking after my family? All those sorts of things. So I'm doing drones. Everything's going well. And then I decide to quit my job. And it wasn't a rash decision. Like I feel like ADHD people can really make some spontaneous decisions. However, some of them have very grave consequences, or you've really got to take seriously. And I wasn't just going to quit my job that, I'd been to uni, I'd been in this career for 10 years. It wasn't taken lightly. So I said, you're right. We're making a better living than when I was teaching. So I quit teaching. But I'm going to do this full time. But a huge problem was when you got ADHD, you are terrible at structuring time and not getting distracted and all these sorts of things that when you work for yourself, you've got to be on top of that. So I'm gone from a job where, okay, I had to be there at 8 o'clock and I leave at this time, and your reports are due every, I don't know, every Wednesday at this time, and every Thursday you get an hour of planning, and then you're going to eat your lunch at this time, to Stuart, here's your job. You can do whatever you want. You're in charge of your own everything. Um, just go have fun. And most people would struggle with that, but with ADD, it is ridiculous, because I could be looking at something and then I'm outside mowing the lawn, but all of a sudden I've decided that I want to make a little diorama picture that I saw. I've never done painting before, but that would be really fun. Let's look at this. So you're at Bunnings and now you're buying like some foam board, and you're going to be making, you've got an old Transformer toy from a kid and you're Googling that, and then they're painting it, and then it's dinner time. You've got to get right. And then, so you've got to do all your taxes and everything else like that comes into trying to run a business. Stop me if I'm going too fast, or if there's anything that you'd like to add, because I'm in like not rant phase, but like I can not get carried away either. But I do, it's something I'm passionate. It's easy to talk about when you're passionate about something. You need a symbol. Maybe you can like put your hand up. I'm used to that.
Okay.
When,
if I have a question.
Yeah, there you go.
So far, it was very interesting. And all I can say at the moment is I relate to many things you say. You know, there's different degrees of ADHD. It affects differently people. But I definitely believe I have a neurodivergent brain. And the you know, what you said, like when you start getting interested into something, that's when trouble can happen.
Yeah,
you know?
if it's at the detriment to the rest of your life. It's a great analogy that I think that, and there's also stigma about ADHD and these things. I'd love to talk about that in a little bit, but I got to finish one part before, otherwise I'll get way too scattered. But you were just saying with you know, you feel like this, and sometimes in, you know, neurodiversity, that it's really hard because a lot of people say, oh, I think I'm like that sometimes. And I'm not discouraging what you're saying. This is general advice. And the best analogy that someone said to me was like, yeah, it's like going to the bathroom. Everyone, you know, goes to the bathroom a couple of times a day. But if you're going 60 times in 1 hour, then that's not normal. That's when it's an issue. And that's when you can understand that it's different. So, you know, even speaking to, you know, family members of mine that still can't you just concentrate more, or there's still some stigma to work through, and things, I get distracted, I'm sure I've got that, or blah blah blah. But it's like, no, but it's my brain and the dopamine receptors and all these things are different. And it's not just like a neurotypical person who can focus. And I'll talk about like medication too towards the end, and it was like, man, is this actually what your brain is like for everyone? This is not fair. It's like you guys have superpowers, not you if you're neurodiverse, but those neurotypical people out there who can focus and like just have like one thought in their brain at a time. It's like, man, this is a joke, right? Like this is like the Truman Show. This can't be real. You guys all get to like focus and listen to people like this all the time. So yeah. Okay, tangent. So drones has gone really well, right? I quit my job, everything's going good, but then I have to work for myself, and it's tough. And I'm so used to seeing like the numbers and, you know, things, and COVID hits, and COVID is a very tough time for a lot of people. And you were in Victoria, I was in Victoria, and it was quite a severe lockdown. The way it was for me and my family. So my wife we'd had our first kid by this stage, and then our second child was about to be born. She was born in COVID, and for me, I like to say, like, there was on and off periods, but I would say we had about a year of lockdown. Would you say that was kind of true? A year of not normal freedom. You couldn't go outside, and you could, like, at some points you couldn't even do exercise. It was really, really strict for anyone listening around the world. I think it was some of the most extreme lockdowns in the world. And I have no problem with the way that it was handled. I feel like people were trying to do the best they could do. I don't think it was the best result, but it's not like I'm jaded at the government or anything like that. But the hard part for me was also not only I couldn't do any work. The police are not going to let me go outside and meet up with people and say, I'm doing my job. Like, you know, I'm just flying around in the park filming with my friends. They'd be like, get out of here. Here's your $1,000 fine for this week. Yeah. And the way that our business was structured, we were also unable to claim any sort of income. So that meant we had 12 months of absolutely zero income, which
Oh,
is
wow.
which is yeah, which is really hard. I mean, like you got a mortgage and everything like that, and all the savings we've been working on. I am so fortunate that we are still, and my wife was luckily getting maternity leave because she was a teacher as well, or she still
Mhm.
is a teacher, and so all that, and then our newborn was like, then Willow was born. So that's, I've only got two kids. So then the youngest was born, and we're stuck in COVID. I can't do my job. I'm looking after everything. I've got unmedicated, undiagnosed, unknown ADHD, and we're making zero money. And we've gone from having huge successes to now, with merging of my identity to UAV Futures, to now you are also getting no dopamine because you can't make any videos. Your identity is like you're blaming yourself, and it's you
Mm.
are tying those falling numbers to your own self-worth, and
Yeah.
it's really a recipe. Now that I look at it, it's like, oh yeah, man, who wouldn't fall apart doing that? And
Mm.
it wasn't like a fall off the cliff. It was, I think, a lot of people when they experience depression, it's not like a switch. It can be a slow, almost like a slow burn of your resolve of where you used to be able to handle things. It's like a candle, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And over time, you'll be, man, I'm pretty close to the base of this candle. What's going on here? This is, and you can kind of
Mm.
look back and you think, man, my candle used to be way up here, and I am all the way down here now. And this is like the normal. This is where it's like burning at for day and night. And it's hard to recognize that objectively because you're in the throes of depression and you're in your own head and looking at those sort of things. I often think like if somebody's crazy, but that a crazy person never says to themselves, I'm crazy. Do you know what I mean? They're kind of like second guessing themselves because their reality, their objectivity is within their own subjectivity. Like they're sort of looking at it themselves, and it's very hard as an outside observer. Like, oh, that ain't right. How many times have you heard relationship advice when someone's like, oh, that guy or that girl, they're a jerk, or blah 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 blah. But then you see that same person could be in a situation when anyone else would be like, can you not see what's happening? This is terrible. But that person's still there, but they could give good advice to somebody else. But when you are in that situation, it's very, very tricky. So
Mhm.
depression for me and all that sort of stuff really built up. And it got to a point where I can remember I would be lying on the floor, and I'd always thought that I was a pretty positive, pretty happy sort of person. And I'm lying on the floor, and it's not like I could get up if I really had to, but to play with your children, and like I'd just be lying on the floor, sort of moving a little car around, going broom, 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 not really being there for them, not being excited about seeing them. And it's COVID for them as well. Like they need stuff to
Mm.
do in the day.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to escape. And I would sometimes it's about to get a little bit dark. Like it was never extremely dangerous and dire, but there were some points in my life where I felt very, very low. And I think if it wasn't for the love that you have for your family and my kids, that I can see how other people
Mm.
uh, can say that's it. I'm going to end everything, and it can be it's a really sad situation.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing too. If you're feeling like this, please go and speak to somebody. I'm sure that we'll be able to put some show notes down below. There's like Beyond Blue. There is so many resources out there, and a great one is that like this advice here. Your depression will pass. It will get better. There are better days. So your candle, it doesn't just burn one way. You can start to put more wax in. I've just made this whole candle analogy up, but
I
I'm
like it.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. So look, I had some really dark days. I was like, man, if I didn't, I hated the idea of my kids like not having a father, or families where people aren't around for them, and that it was never an option for me. But it doesn't mean that sometimes life was really hard
Mm.
to live. And so I went, and I had seen a psychologist in the past, and this is ADHD related, but I didn't know because I would have trouble sleeping.
Oh.
And that is a huge part of ADHD. So when you go to bed, like your brain does not work like other people. So we'll get onto that in there. But so I went, and we're discussing some things, and this is way back, and then I stopped seeing them, and then I was like, oh, well, I've gone to a psychologist before. I'll go again, and I'll start talking about some of these feelings that I'm having, and I know something's not right. So I first went and spoke to the doctor. You get a referral. Went and spoke to them, and that was a long process. And look, sometimes you get a really good psychologist. Sometimes you get someone that just doesn't fit for you, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's it's like friends. Sometimes like that's a cool person, but I just don't gel with them. And other times
Mm.
you'll find people like, oh, I can open up to them, or I can talk to them, and
Mm-hmm.
I can get something out of this session. I feel like it's the best psychologist sessions are when you go in like, man, that was hard, but it was
Mm.
good. And the worst
Yeah.
ones are when you go in, you're like, what did you do? Was that hard? And like, no, it was, well, I didn't talk about anything. I don't feel
Yeah.
like I made any progress there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're in lockdown and it sucks. And I've got depression. I've got undiagnosed ADHD. And my wife is kind of like, what's going on? And I'm escaping every night. And I just go and play video games. So I'd wake up really late, completely unfair to my family. Like, I mean, like 11 or something, wouldn't want to get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not fair on her and the two little kids and that sort of stuff. And then I would exist, so not really engage like a proper father should, but I would just be around. And then they'd all go to bed, and then I'd be like, okay, and I'd just disappear into like playing some computer games with my friends or something at like really, really late at night. And that's sort of like an escape that I have. And something I need to be careful about is like I can notice, oh, I'm playing way more video games than I used to. So I don't really drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any recreational drugs or anything like that. But I would say that I do disappear into video games. Like that would be my escape.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between people who like a beer and people who like 20 beers. So I can play some video games with my friends, but if I'm like staying up till 5 a.m. like 2 weeks in a row, and that, well, then that's a problem. So anyway, I'm escaping into video games and everything, and life is not good. I make a video on YouTube just explaining it, and the outpouring of support was astonishing. The amount of people out there who have issues, or they could either relate, they knew somebody that they wanted to help, or they were just wanting to help. Like they were like, Stu, I feel for you. Thanks for talking about this. It was the FPV community and the drone community is amazing at supporting each other. From what I've seen, the amount of kindness and love is very unprecedented, I would say, in an quote internet community, online community. Like it's really nice and really kind. And I think the amount of tossers or the amount of silly people in the hobby is so minuscule versus the amount of quality, kind, caring, just good human beings that are in here. So
yeah.
So all that happens, and my wife's like, "What are we doing?" And some other coincidences. My wife, we talked about living in Queensland. I really like Queensland. The weather has a huge part of my mood when I look outside. And anybody who's listening to this who hasn't lived in Melbourne, I hope you are. Just imagine like a terrible day, right? It's rainy, it's stormy, and it's that same feeling when you've also got to go to school for the day. Like, oh man, it's only Tuesday morning. I've got to go to school today. Picture back when you're a school kid and it's drizzling outside and your shoes are wet. That's Melbourne every day. That's like, you get like 20 days a year of like, man, this is nice. And they're also interspersed with like one nice day, one bad day, one windy day. And it's so windy down there as well, which is ridiculous which is when you're a drone pilot, wind is a huge deal.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So my wife's like, okay, what about Queensland? We sort of have a think about it. And my mum, she lives up here, and they were doing a little bit of traveling. So COVID hadn't really hit the Queensland side of things. They were going to go to the Northern Territory, and they said, Stuart, would you like to house sit for us for a couple of months? And I was like, yeah, actually. Okay. So then that was like a catalyst of that. And we thought, okay, let's go up. We packed our house up and we thought, okay, let's sell the house. Let's do it. Like, what are we doing here? I'm not happy what I'm doing. My wife's still on maternity leave, but she didn't want to go back to that school. She was ready for a change. And we've got 2 young kids. They're not in school yet. We talk about going to Queensland. What better situation do you need? And you've got somewhere to stay when you go up there. If it's not now, you're never going to go. So we packed the house up. We've got our plane tickets, and then like a real sharp second COVID wave hits, right? And it's like it went from everything's going back up to everything is locking down. All the flights, you could see them disappearing. I booked 3 different flights to come up here for our family, like one day, the next day, and the next day, because we weren't sure when the lockdowns were going to happen. And I'm not sure if we're going to get a fine. I don't know what's going to happen. We madly packed the house up in 2 weeks. Everything, and I thought I was going to go back down as well. So I thought I've never been back to the house that we sold like that. It wasn't even completely finished. So we pack everything up. We head to the airport. It is a ghost town, and we're about to get in the car, right? So 2 kids are in the back. This is crazy. And this is one of those pinnacle moments in your life where things change. It could be by the flip of a coin.
Mm.
And the 2 kids are in the back. We've packed in our carry-on and everything. We're going to go up. My mum's going to pick me up from the airport if we arrive in Queensland. And I'm standing there, and the news is going crazy with COVID. There's full lockdowns. They're talking about like Brisbane might be shutting down. You won't be able to go into Queensland. And I said, I don't think we should go. Like, I don't want to do mandatory quarantine for, I think it was 4 weeks or something in a hotel that you had to pay for. And that's like, it was like $6,000 for it per family or something. I was like, I don't want to do that. We can't afford to do that. And so she said, let's just go to the bus and go to the airport. So, okay, we get to the bus, we get to the airport, and you're allowed to be out because we were moving. So you were still allowed to move house. It was in the regulations. We weren't breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at the premier up here, Anastasia, blah, 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 whatever her name is. She has an early press conference, and she says, right, we're locking the borders. If you are in here past midday, you're past 12 o'clock, sorry, you've got to go into mandatory quarantine. And we look and we're like, man, our flight gets in at 11:15. We're sweet. Like we weren't sick, but we're allowed to go. So, and luckily she came on and did that early, because otherwise we would have been in the air when her press conference, if it had been on at the normal time. So we jump in. I call my mum and she's like, look, she might have called me and said, oh, the news is saying this and we're watching it in the airport. Okay, we get on the plane, we walk out, and it's like, oh my gosh, we're in Queensland. It really was like we escaped. It felt like a movie. Do you know what I mean? Like we've just dodged lockdown and everything. And the lockdown went down. It was on for like another 4 or 3 months or something crazy down there in Victoria. So we're up here. Then it's a whole nother rigmarole of selling houses, buying houses, trying to get a place to live, getting the house packed up, finished by some other people. Doing stuff when you can never return is quite difficult. So do that. And then we end up in Queensland. It takes a while to settle in. If you look at my drone related stuff, it wasn't really doing much, right? People say you're busy and those sorts of things. They're like, man, what am I doing? Like, am I still into these drones, or like I'm not getting anywhere with them? And it's only now that here I am and I'm back, and I've been on medication, and you will see a huge difference that we came across, and we learned that I've got ADHD, and the medication completely changed my life. And I'm feeling so much more positive because of that, that I'm able to, we're transitioning off antidepressants and those sorts of things, which I'd previously been on when I was down there in those really dark times. And I'm all for them as well. If you need the help of antidepressants, please don't ever be ashamed of taking them. I think the medicine worked for me and my life was getting better, but there were some other things I needed to change as well. And the big one for me was getting my ADHD medicated. So anyway, so there we are after that huge rant. That's my kind of story of like where it was, how dark it was, the situation that led me getting out of that place, and to where I am today, where I'm feeling so much more positive. I'm feeling so much better about myself. I have separated my core identity to UAV Futures. UAV Futures is my job. It's what I love doing and what I love sharing, but it's not who I am. So I've separated from that, and just in such a better, happier headspace that I'm excited to go to work. Like, for the first time in a long time, I'm finally feeling like, if someone said, Stuart, do you want to do another 2 hours work? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Sure. This is fun. Like, I'm enjoying it. Whereas before it was, I wouldn't say it was a drag, but it was not enjoyable. So,
yeah. It's true. It's even noticing the difference between our different interactions. So, by the way, I am not accusing you of anything, and I know what it is because, maybe quick tangent, I was diagnosed extremely depressed, like medically extremely depressed in 2020. Yes. It was not really related to the pandemic. It's just like you said. That's why I really like your candle analogy. Yes. It's not like one day you wake up, you're sad. It's not that. It's you running out of battery. Actually, it's also a battery, It's like you're flying, you think you're on the simulator and you have forever. And then suddenly you're like, oh, actually, I need to land right now because something's wrong. But the thing is, I had sort of high functioning depression. So I
Hmm.
didn't think I was depressed that much because
Yes.
I was going to work. I was exercising at home. Even I mean, I was going to work. I was working from home when I
Yeah.
could because it was the pandemic. But I even had just found a new job, so I had been able to go through all the interview process um, and then I was exercising. Some people when they are depressed, they find it hard to clean the house, to clean themselves. No problem with that. The house was super clean.
Hmm.
Super clean. No, I'm not bragging. It's not that super
It was
clean, but
like it was
it
a
was.
normal living house.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was going out walking the dogs. I mean, I
Yep.
had one dog at the time. The only thing I wasn't really doing was talking to my friends and family. And inside, I was not well at all. I could feel it, and that's why I started talking to a psychologist. And during the first interview, not interview, but discussion we do, she has a
Hmm.
question, like different questions to ask you.
Yeah,
What?
like a K20 or a K10 and things like
Yes,
that. Yep.
exactly. And as I was answering the questions, because me, I was like, yeah, whatever. It's she's gonna say you're sad, or And as I answered the questions, I was like, this is not going well.
Yeah.
This is going to be not fun. And she couldn't give me the diagnosis on the day, so I had to wait for the second session. And that's when she
Yes.
said, this is what's happening. You have a little bit of I thought I had a lot of anxiety and a little bit of depression.
Yes.
Turns out it was the opposite. So we worked on that. And all of this to say that I am able now also to reflect on depending on how people interact with me. I know if they're feeling good or not. And a few times I had messaged you when you were still in Victoria to
Hmm.
just hang out, and I didn't want to force anybody. But
Yep. Yep.
I realized in your answer that maybe you were not in a good place and you didn't have time to socialize, or not time, but the energy yourself, Whereas when we tried to organize the podcast, in a minute, you were like, yep, no worries. And I'm like,
Yeah.
he's feeling better. I could tell. And again, it's nothing against you. I know how it feels to really want to not it's not like you don't want to do anything. It's you cannot really do it, no
Yes.
matter how much you want to do it.
I
Yeah.
think thank you for sharing that too, because I think it's important for people to be able to openly talk about their depression and mental health. Like it's something that's so important to. If you're sick, if you break your leg, you're going to go to the doctor. But if you break your mind, then people are like, the old school of like, oh, he's a bit crazy or whatever. Like that's not
Mm.
true. You've got something that you need to go to the doctor for, a psychologist for. So thank you for sharing that. I think it means a lot to me. And on a
Mm.
personal level, like of friends, thank you for sharing that with me. And also for people listening, I'm sure it'll mean a lot to them as well.
Yeah.
Um, that's right. So the energy thing, right? So when you say, "Hey, can we meet up?" or something, I think a lot of times there's two parts to that. Depression can really suck the energy out of anything fun. Like so when you're depressed, what's the doctor say? He says, go outside, do some exercise, eat right, take some to go meet up with friends, maybe socialize, go do all those things that depression makes almost impossible to do.
Mm.
Like it's Stuart, do you want to go for a walk? No, I'm depressed. Oh, how do you get better? How do you get out of depression? Well, you got to go for a walk. It's like this catch-22 sort of thing, which is
Yeah.
which is really hard. But another thing I would say for people with ADHD, they can be completely oblivious to what is happening. Like if someone said something and it's gone, like you've forgotten about it. You say okay, and then you don't look at your phone again, or you never see that. It's your working memory and your capacity to hold different parts of information and assign them different values of importance is not like normal people. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I've got a message back, Noelle, blah blah. Man,
Mm.
I'm planting a lemon tree in the backyard. Like I've totally forgotten whatever we were talking about. Like
Yeah.
it's gone. So yeah, I am
Yeah.
I am sorry. I'm sorry we didn't catch up, but I have no guilt about doing that, and I know you don't hold any
Nah.
reservations about that. So
Yeah, not at
yeah,
all. Yeah, because I can understand from different perspectives, and also I have been understood by my own friends when there was a time where I was like, oh, I don't know if it's an ADHD thing as well, but sometimes it feels like simple tasks are hard to do. And
yep,
a quick confession here: when I woke up this morning at work, I had some important stuff to do this morning, and then I was
yep,
driving back home to have this going on. And in the past, when I was depressed for sure, I would have given up on one of the two. I would have been like, I would probably have chosen work. Sorry, because that's the money, and I would have been like, "Oh, Stewart, sorry, I'm not feeling well," or
I'm just not up to it. I'm not feeling it. I can't. I don't have the energy. I had a bad sleep. Or what? And often you make excuses rather than saying my depression's not. I'm not feeling great. I don't want to do this for my mental health. I can't. And you don't even. In the weird part, you say I'm sorry, but you wouldn't have to be sorry. It should be enough to say I'm mentally not feeling right. I can't do today. And a friend or someone be like, I accept. I understand.
Yeah. And quick note for the audience, like you don't have to be depressed to also feel like this. Sometimes life is too much for other reasons. And feel free. We've done that with all my friends now because we're the same kind of people. Like recently I told a friend, hey, it's been a while. Can I give you a call? And she said, I'm not really, I don't really have the energy for a call today, but I'm happy to text for a little bit. And I'm like, yep, no worries, and you shouldn't be offended by this because your friend is your friend in the first place and it can happen. And I'd rather know the truth. I'd rather know that she might be overwhelmed by other things than selfishly expecting her to have to pick up the phone. Because for social reasons, like it's not really
everyone's got their own life going on. Everyone else is struggling. There's no one's happy all the time. It's an impossible feeling. You would if that was how it's meant to be, it would just be called normal. It would just be like your emotion. This is what it is being human. But part of the human condition, I guess, is having these emotions and feelings. And I sort of forgot where I was going with this. Anyway, you can't expect people to do other things, but you also can't expect yourself to be able to do other things. You should be able to express that to people without fear of judgment or repercussion.
Yeah. So we're gonna soon have a friend of mine jumping in the podcast to ask you some questions about ADHD. But before we do that, I still had a couple of questions.
Go for it.
I wanted to ask you a couple. They're probably tied a bit together. It's what did you learn from all the things you have been through, and how are things for you now?
Sure. So what did I learn from? Is this general? Like, is this like drone related or mental health related? Or
I feel like quite linked.
Everything.
Yeah.
I have learned probably there's a couple of things. Number one is a lesson I teach my kids is it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you feel passionate about it, you are going to feel rewarded from that endeavor. I've never been big into money or finance, like getting rich and grinding and all that sort of stuff, or material possessions. To me, it has been about relationships and doing what you love and being passionate about something. And I'm really lucky that I'm not going to say stumbled, and lucky is not the right word as well, because I feel like that's not counting the work that I put into it. And but I would, something that I've learned is just chase your dreams. Like, what have you got to lose? Life is, that old thing, life is too short, blah, 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 blah. And look, you still need to do it responsibly, especially when you've got family and a mortgage and all that sort of stuff. But I've really learned to chase what you believe in and back yourself and give it a go. Like, what's the worst that really could happen if you try something? And something you should never be concerned about is what someone else is going to think about you. And if they're going to judge you for doing what you want to do, well, man, stuff those people. They can go work in the bank. Look, that's for me what I would not want to do. Nothing against bankers, but there's no way that I want to sit behind a teller and say your finances and interest, blah blah blah. Something that I've learned personally on an ADHD level, that like it will pass if you're depressed, and some people will. I'm still out on the fence if depression is uncurable for everyone. I don't know enough of the research I believe and I hope that if you were ever not depressed, then you can get back to that state of being not depressed. If someone's been depressed their entire life, well, I don't know I don't know that. I'm not a neurologist. I don't know the chemical makeup behind those situations, but I think that they can get out of it. And it might seem really hard, and it is really hard. And it's nothing about how much money you've got or how much love you've got or anything like that, although those things can help. If you've got a fantastic support network, like I was very lucky to have, it does help. But even the richest people in the world can get very, very depressed. I think, I don't know, this could be completely wrong, but just in my mind. Sorry if there's a chainsaw going off next door. Is that coming through?
No, it's
Is
not.
it?
It's
Okay,
okay.
great, great. My neighbor, good one, Frank. He's always working, puts me to shame, and I'm like, oh gosh, Frank, can you just stop doing that work, please? My wife's going to ask me to clean up the yard. What's going on? But I think it was Jim Carrey's wife.
Hmm.
Took her own life, and she was like, and that's someone who's rich and famous and thinks they've got it all, and looks like
Mm.
they've got it all. So that, if that's not the case, I don't know. I don't know where I pulled that little stat from, but maybe if rich people struggle as well,
Yeah.
people who have got hundreds of friends, they can struggle as well. So it is not always your situation. You can't blame yourself and think, oh, if I had this or if I had that, or I had an amazing family, I had an amazing job, I had heaps of free time,
Mm.
and I still really struggled. So please don't blame yourself. I think, and don't think if I just had this, it would get better. It's, you just sort of need to go and talk to a professional, and they will be able to steer you in the right direction. I got totally sidetracked here. The thing was, what have I learned? And also, okay, I've learned that ADHD or ADD, because I don't really have the hyperactivity part about it.
Mhm.
And I'm still learning, because it's been very early days for me the way that I discovered that I had ADHD, and it made my life make so much sense. It was like a huge weight had been taken off my shoulders, that it was sort of like, man, yeah, I was able to not blame myself for all these things way back to like school and high school, and think, yeah, there's an answer. There's a reason for that. Like,
Mm.
it's sort of like, to have a, why is this food always tasting so bad? Oh, have you realized that you're putting on like an extra tablespoon of you're covering your food in salt every day, like an
Mm.
extra 2 kilos? Like, have you realized that? Oh man, it's not my cooking. It's this spoon that's got 6 kilos
Mm.
of salt in it, or something. So
Mm.
I've learned a lot about ADHD. I've learned what I'm passionate about. What I'm truly passionate about is helping people. So I
Mhm.
like helping people about drones. I liked helping people when I was a teacher. And for me now, that's more important for me than drones. It's helping and changing people's lives, and having a positive impact on them, that they can get something out of it as well.
Yeah.
And drones are so good at that. Like, they offer so
Yeah.
many great things. It's great community, getting outside, meeting people, interesting skills. Like, it ticks so many boxes, but that's why I push it so hard. But yeah, for helping people is probably my number one passion. And the last thing that I learned, that I think only creators can, or content creators can understand, is the self-worth you tie with your online persona can be quite powerful, especially if you are getting a dopamine hit from those numbers and that recognition. And I'm putting fame in quotation marks here,
Mm.
that it can be really good and powerful when you're feeling great and you're on top of the world. But when that tap gets turned off, you're not in control of that. So to have your self-worth tied to something that you're not in control of is a very dangerous um, position to put yourself in. So I've learned to separate those two, and focus on what I am, what is Stewart is, and it's not UAV Futures.
Mm. Good. Thank you. Thank you for
Oh, my
sharing all
pleasure. My
this.
pleasure. My pleasure. It's been great.
It's very interesting. I was looking forward to this conversation as well since the moment we started planning it, because I watched your video related to this topic, because you've made a full video recently on your
Yep.
YouTube channel. So I was aware of some topics you talked about, but I'm really glad you opened up on other topics in here, and yeah. So I assume things are better for you now.
For me now, since getting medicated, like, my life had gotten better, but I was still feeling, empty's not the right word. I wasn't feeling in the throes of depression or anything like that, but I didn't feel like I was drastically improving. And it was more than surviving. I was feeling better than just surviving. I was still engaging with my family. I was getting into work, but I didn't have a drive. I didn't have that passion. But
Mm.
since getting medicated, uh, it's so hard to explain. It's almost like, yeah, yeah, it's like someone just gave you a whole new candle, a whole new work candle. Like,
Oh
so you still
yeah.
got your normal candle, and then you've got your whole new normal stuff that's sometimes hard when you've got ADHD candle. You're like, oh, that's all this work stuff and business stuff and organization stuff. Oh, I can just light that candle, so my normal candle my Stuart McSpadden candle can just burn over here, and it will be fine.
Nice.
Yeah, see, I've learned. I forget where I was going, but so where am I now? Much better. So then, and that is directly related to not only a diagnosis. I felt better as soon as I was diagnosed, and I did all the tests and everything like that, to have some understanding of the way not only my brain works, but also to remove some of that blame that you always you do blame yourself a lot when you've got ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the medication started, it was a whole nother level of like, this is normal functioning. This is like having a superpower. Like
Yeah.
it's been so hard previously to do like the dishes or like the washing. And people often say, oh, that person's lazy or something like that. They don't understand what it is like to do a boring task when you've got ADHD. I could not do the dishes. There is so many times when my wife has a video with the kids or something, right? They're little doing work, and I might be doing the dishes, but I'm on the phone. I've got like a headset on. I would be on Discord every night talking while I've got that on, or I'm watching a video while I'm doing something. To be able to do those mundane tasks that everybody needs to do while you've got ADHD, yeah, thank you so much for medication, because without that, it's very hard. So it makes my life a lot easier.
That's awesome. And I hope it will encourage people to either seek diagnosis. It's not always easy to get, to pay for, to, you know,
it's expensive.
It's expensive. People are busy, like therapists, and because you need to see psychiatrists.
So I had to see a psychologist first.
Mm-hmm.
And no one picked it up. Like this is the weird part too. Like it was up to me, the way that I was like, oh man, do I have ADHD? And like one of my friends, shout out to Rod, he said, hey, you got ADHD though, don't you, Stewart? And it was like a joke, haha, because we'd be playing a game, and I would be like waiting around for him to do something. I'd be like, come on, I'm ready, let's go. And even if it was just like 10 seconds, but I'm just sitting there with my little video game character on the screen waiting for him to do whatever he was doing, would feel like an eternity. So that was like a joke he'd always say. But my wife one time said, oh, look at these for ADHD questions. And she read them out, and I was like, yeah. And I thought she was joking, right? And I said, okay, can you read some of the ones that I don't have? Like, and she's like, man, I'm not skipping any of these.
Wow.
This is like every single one. Like I'm saying yes. And that's when I started the journey of like, okay, I was still seeing the psychologist because I care about my mental health. And I said, look, I want to investigate this. And it is a long process. Looked at the report, and he was like, you are the textbook definition of ADD. Like if there was ever a case when like, what's ADD look like? It'd be like, that's you. So I say ADD because I'm not actually ADHD,
mm-hmm.
but I don't have the hyperactivity side of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's still like a bit, it's not that it's not there, but it's not like the rest of it. So the ADD is 100% me, and that's where I am. And then from there, I was able to take that to the psychiatrist, and they do some more tests. I had to do, and there's also things like heart tests and liver tests and blood tests, and it's a long process, and it was expensive, and I had to wait. Like I was on a wait list, I think for 8 months or something, until I got in and saw the psychiatrist, who is the only person who can prescribe the medications to treat that. And then it was like a switch, basically, of like, man, is this? I did my taxes like 3 days after being on medication that I had ignored for like a year. When you're self-employed and you got to run your own tax and business and everything, I was like, man, I think I might just do my taxes. And I did them in like 3 hours. I was like, are you kidding me? This usually takes me like 2 days of getting distracted. And so some things in life have become a lot easier.
Yeah. So I encourage people to, if anything rings a bell in what we've said, they're like, oh, wait a minute, I do that all the time. You can start self-researching on internet. It's there's so many resources. My favorite resource, because I'm female, it's a podcast called The Neurodivergent Woman.
Okay.
It doesn't talk only about women, it's about anybody, but it's also focused on women because, for example, autism in women is very, very different than autism in men. And it's also a neurodivergent type of brain. And that's, you said you had a realization with ADHD. Me, it's when I listen to episodes of women with autism that I'm like,
you feel like that's you, the way that you're, and that, sorry, I'm interrupting here. You finish. Yeah.
I was just going to say, and that's enough to just, listen to other people's experience, like what you shared with us, and discover a bit about yourself and be like, maybe I should explore a bit that way. But go on.
I have a funny story about that, actually. So before I met my wife, hopefully she doesn't listen to this part of the podcast. Block your ears here, Julie, but I was dating this other girl, right, before you, believe it or not, darling. Anyway, and, things didn't work out. Nothing against a great girl, but I can remember having a conversation, and because as a teacher, you train a lot about autism, right? That's what you were just speaking about, and I was like,
Yes.
some of these traits, like I care about you. Have you ever thought about this? And to discover that I don't know how it went in the end because I was never there at the end of the diagnoses or anything, but she was really open about it. That she was like, "Man, I think I am actually autistic, Stewart."
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I never knew that, and it explained so much. And
Mm-hmm.
it was sort of like a bit of an eye opener to be like, wow, you
Yeah.
can go so long and not have a true understanding of why your brain is the way that it is. And I think it was a something that she might have known that was right, because then the more she looked into it, the more it's like, yeah, this is making so much
Mm-hmm.
sense to me. And I
Yeah.
understand that. And that's like the ADD diagnosis for me. It was like, man, this is amazing what I am learning and feeling from this stuff.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend everyone to to do research if that resonates with you. So that podcast, Neurodivergent Woman, but there's lots of podcasts out there. And on top of that, we're going to welcome my friend. I'm going to tell him to join us because
Sure.
he will have additional question to ask you. It might help people realize what it's like to live with someone who has ADHD or a family member, a child, and it might just, help. So
Fantastic.
bear with us while we're doing the technicalities of him trying to join.
Luckily, we've got some editing skills right here. So if you're listening on the podcast, we'll be back very soon. You won't even have to wait.
Yeah, he said he's on his way. So
good.
Maybe I should do my promo in.
Go for it.
I have Patreon. Can you believe it? You're the one who told me I should get Patreon years ago. So I have a Patreon. We have 2 patrons so far. So feel free to support the podcast if you like what you listen to, and share it with your friends and people who think might be interested. And I think Sam is joining. Hi, Sam.
Fantastic. I love your chair there got there, Sam. That nice gaming chair.
As yours.
It looks very similar. Very similar. So, and also I should say, Patreon, please, if you are looking at it, not mine, but go join this podcast's Patreon, because it makes a huge difference to content creators, especially when you can put so much work into something, and to have something blow up is fantastic, but often the work is very unrecognized, and Patreon is such a strong backbone to giving a stable income and a way for people to do this. So please, are the links in the show notes, or where are they? If someone would like to support this.
Yes, they are in the show notes. And you have Patreon as well. And fun fact,
I do, but
Sam is one of my patrons, of my 2 patrons.
So. Fantastic. Good on you, Sam. Gold star. Well done.
Yes. And another fun fact, if it wasn't for you, Stu, I don't think Sam would know my channel or me, because he discovered me through your channel.
Fantastic. Are you into drones as well, Sam?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Sorry about that.
I was one of your patrons for a while.
You're such a champion. Look at this man supporting everyone on here. We'll have to go back and support Sam's Patreon after this, Noelle. We can all share. There we go. I've just put my foot in it. Okay, I'm signing up. Yeah.
It's not drones, though.
Okay. What is it? What is it for anybody who's wondering?
My photography stuff.
Fantastic. Very cool. Very cool.
Yes, so Sam was in the latest episode that was just published, so the one before that, episode 49. This is going to be episode 50, so people from my audience might already know Sam.
Can I say one thing? That is a huge, too, if you're listening to this, man, is Patreon for me. That's not just the episode 1 or 2 thing that Noelle is doing here with this, this podcast. There's 50 episodes. That's some serious commitment to know that if you are supporting this, it's going to be going forwards as well. It's not just going to be disappearing tomorrow. So there you go. Sorry, Sam. Sorry.
That's right.
I'm so glad we're all here now. And so, Sam, we've just done a whole episode about Stu's journey through YouTube and ADHD, and, pretty much what Stu has explained in one of his most recent videos. But we were also talking about how this story can kind of resonate with people who listen to this podcast and be like, oh my God, wait a minute, I have ADHD, or my wife has ADHD. Mm-hmm. And so that's pretty much your case. Recently,
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, do you want to talk a bit about what happened to your family regarding ADHD?
Look, just around about the time you put out your video, Stu, my wife actually got diagnosed with ADHD, and, it's been an ongoing issue with her, and finally we've got a name to what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty much what's happened to us. So we're just going through getting all the medications right and everything at the moment.
Yes.
Basically wanted to know, what families can do to support someone with ADHD.
To help, I got a few questions first, like, because I find this
yeah.
is just as interesting for me on the other side of things, because I'm the one with ADHD. So to hear your experiences as well as driving my wife crazy, you know, those sorts of things. But like for your wife, was it a great relief, do you feel, for her to be like, oh, that's what it is? Did you feel like there was a relief to get that label?
There was a bit of that. There was also a bit of anger that it hasn't been picked up before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Where has this been the entire 37 years of my life?
Well, that's the thing. She was tested as a teenager.
Ah, okay.
And you don't have ADHD is what they said, but
yes,
it's because back then the model was based around, what was it, like a 14-year-old boy or something?
Yeah, it was probably based on behavioral too, like in terms of hyperactivity was a huge indicator, but it's not
definitely
not
if I can quickly interrupt, and then I'll get you back. That goes back to what we were just saying before you entered, Sam. Neurodivergent women, due to the fact the way we are raised in society, we are usually a lot less diagnosed than men, and men are already not that well diagnosed, obviously, you know, because Stu didn't get picked up. But it's even worse for women because we are usually told to be, you know, discreet and not make too much fuss. So when we have actual little neurodivergent behaviors, it doesn't get picked up. So that's another thing.
Make sure in the classroom that you are quiet, you are reserved, you just sit there, which is quite often the case when, you know, especially if you're autistic or something like that, to sit there and just do your work, what you're told. It's it's very easy to go under the radar. And as working in the education, you know, scene for 10 years, I can 100% attest to that. But I should say congratulations, Sam, that your wife was finally diagnosed after
thank you we went through all different things before that, you know, like various depression and anxiety and bipolar and all of this stuff. And
is she on medication at the moment?
She's just started it a couple of weeks ago.
And can I ask you,
it's already making a difference. But yeah, she's had to go up in dose, which started yesterday. So we're just waiting for that to kick in and see.
The beauty
how much
about
of a difference that makes.
The beauty about medication with ADHD medication. So I've been on antidepressants, and I'm on a slow journey to get off antidepressants now. So it's to the point talking to the psychologist. Okay, you're going great on your ADHD medication. That seems to take care of the things that you were taking antidepressants to try and treat those symptoms with the ADHD medication. It's treating ADHD, so you're not going to have those symptoms relating from that. But the beauty about ADHD medications, I know, I said to the psychiatrist, how long does this take to, like, is it like a 6-week ramp up, blah, blah. He's like, man, you'll like 20 minutes and you'll know if your tablet's working. And then, like, you know, lunchtime comes and it's like, oh, that's right. I'm so distracted and I forgot, because it's worn off and it's back to like normal ADD brain. And then you take your tablet.
It's exactly like
and
that.
It's like, I'm a normal functioning adult, a neurotypical functioning adult for the next 3 hours.
Well, that's what it was like for her. You know, she, especially today with the second, like the double dose. And, you know, like she's like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling like it came to 11 o'clock, which is usually when she takes her next one. She's like, oh, I think I might just stretch it till 11:30. But then it got to like 11:15. It's like, no, actually, it's worn off. I need it now. And it's just like that. It just clicks. All of a sudden.
It's for, I don't know, for any, I'll just explain this for viewers as well, because it's not just us three having the conversation, I guess, for the people listening. It is really like, I can remember the first time that I took a tablet, and the focus that you get is unbelievable in terms of how most, I'm going to get into a little bit of science here. Is that okay, guys? Or are we running over time? I'm happy to keep talking about this.
There's no overtime today.
Fantastic. So the way that it works, a lot of people see ADHD as being way hyperactive, right? Which is a slight misrepresentation of what's actually happening. So our brains actually operate on a slower level in like this dopamine receptor. I think I'd have to look up the words, right? If I wanted to explain this with the correct scientific big science words speak here. So anyways, but your brain receptors of the dopamine, it's not actually firing quite as fast as some of the others. So it's constantly trying to crave this dopamine and it's getting distracted. Whereas most human brains can focus on something, the receptors are passing that dopamine across and you're getting rewarded for that stimuli. And that's what you can focus on. But ADHD, you might look at something and you're not getting that immediate hit straight away. So then you're looking over here and you're just searching for those little hits in your brain and you are getting distracted by so many different things. Each thing has the same amount of value, because there's nothing there that's giving you, oh, I'm meant to be doing my work, I'm getting my dopamine hit from this. It's not that link is not instant. So I'm doing my work, I'm not getting anything. Now I'm off over here doing that. So the thought of doing a laborious task that you don't want to do is an absolute nightmare. But when you take the medication, sorry, that's my dog in the background. When you take the medication and you have ADD, it speeds up that part of the brain. So it is able to catch up with the rest of it. So it's almost like having an email system. Imagine having your boss up the top, all your workers down below, but your email's down. Nothing. It's like it takes 20 minutes to send that email. So what's going on? Your workers are over here. Your boss says, go do this. But by the time they've done that, it's lunchtime. Something's happened, blah, blah, it's not working. But you take your medication, that email system speeds back up to where it's like instantaneous with the rest of it. And all those messages can work together. So then you can focus on things. Now, if I give you someone who is not on Medicaid, who is not ADD, and their brain is working as is intended, then it speeds it up. And that's where they get really amped up. And because it isn't, well, the one I take, and I think most of the ones take, so like Ritalin is the common brand name, and that is an amphetamine. So for most people, they go, I guess, I don't know what the word here, like high, or they're a little bit, I don't know, because I've never done really.
Drugs.
Basically, yeah. So I'm not into drugs. It's not my thing. But also, I have no problem with people who that's their own body, their own choices, whatever people want to do. But for me, I've never taken amphetamines. It hasn't been this medication, but other people who take them, they really get high on them, and it seem charged up and amped, from what I can tell, or what people have told me. But if I take it, it's like such a calming effect, and you are like focus. So getting back to what I was saying was, when I first took my tablet, Sam, it was like, I can remember my daughter was in front of me, and like it's been like 20 minutes, and I can sort of, I notice, because I'm looking at her and I can see her talking, but all this other stuff that was happening wasn't in frame. Like it was like, It's like, when you put blinkers on a horse, like you see a horse with like blinkers when it's like in a parade or something, it's walking down the street, or like a police horse. That's what it was like. But it was like blinkers for my mind, where I could look at my daughter, and it was such a profound, strong effect, where I was like, it was almost distracting to me. Like, I am so focused on what this kid is saying. Like I am right here with you. I am like I've never felt this way before. Like, and everything that I could do, I could just look at it or work on something or listen to somebody without this symphony of an orchestra of ideas and thoughts and distractions taking place. And it was like, like your wife, probably very frustrated that it wasn't picked up before, because it makes such a difference to your mind. It is so hard to explain to somebody. It's like, imagine trying to, it's like, it's so hard to explain what it's like until you've been on the medication and you realize, is this what it's like? Because without that, it's so different. It's so bizarre.
Was it a sense of relief?
When I took them, like, is in like the actual, once I was on the medication, or
once you're on the medication and you've realized that, I can focus now. Was that a real sense of relief? Or?
There's two parts. There was a huge relief once I was diagnosed, and like your wife's gone through a bit of anger that, like, imagine if I had this in school, where would I have been, blah, blah, blah. But I'm also very grateful that I have ADHD, so I can talk about that in a little bit as well. But also the relief that I didn't have to blame myself for things. Like, I lost the keys or I lost that. That's not my fault. Like, I wouldn't blame you if you had a wheelchair and I said, man, are you going to walk up the back and up those stairs for me, Sam? Are you going to Are you going to go pick that up? Like, what's going on? That's up the back. Are you going to push that lawnmower? Oh, I'm in a wheelchair. You just need to try a little bit harder. You should concentrate more in school, Sam. So you sort of don't blame yourself in that way. That was a relief for me to sort of reassess my self-worth. I actually had a sense of that when my wife was diagnosed as well. It's like, okay, so she can't do these, It's, she just physically can't. Yes, it's like, not her fault.
Now I understand that it's not a mindset thing. It's a disability. Yeah.
Would you be upset at your wife if she was in a wheelchair and you said, are you going to walk up the stairs and just go get the shopping bags for me? No.
Of course I would be.
Yeah. Look at Stewart flex and living in his house with stairs. Settle down. But, so like that's something that people need to understand as well. Like, and that's where, for my wife, understanding me, I feel like she is much less pissed at me now that she can understand things and be like, it's not your fault. and that's all right. It's no one's fault. And
I'm
that's why I like the
feeling a lot of
wheelchair
that too.
analogy, where it's because wheelchair is so visible, right? And no one's going to hate on anyone in a wheelchair. And for me, that's a good analogy. It's very clear for people to see and be like, yeah, well, are you sure you can't just concentrate and like work a little bit harder and not be lazy? Are you sure you can't just move those legs a little bit? Come on, just move your leg up the stairs. Like, so like that. But yeah, huge relief.
This is the problem with invisible disabilities as well.
Yes,
because my wife also suffers chronic fatigue syndrome.
Oh,
so she's had to deal with that.
Yeah, and people are like, "Can you just like try to go to bed earlier? Have you just tried eating better? Oh, then maybe if your diet was better, you could get up in the morning. Have you tried a nice alarm clock with a soft light there, Sam? Maybe that'll wake you up better in the morning. You know, like I'm sure you love it. It's like that's the sort of expectations that society puts on people.
Pretty
like
much.
That.
Yep.
So, was it a relief taking the medication? Yes, in terms of like not only understanding it all, but being like, man, I can focus. Like, and this is proof that I'm back here. I'm doing work. I'm passionate about it, and I'm excited about it for the first time in a long time. To be able to
that shows in your videos too.
Stuff. Thanks, man. I'm glad because it's. I really am excited and happy about doing what I'm doing. And did your wife? Has she jumped a few careers, like every 5 years or 6 years or anything like that?
Yeah, pretty much.
There you go.
Every 3 to 4,
Yeah, because you are looking, you can get right into something, but when you've got ADHD, it is really hard they are significantly and statistically much more likely to change professions because they're not getting that dopamine hit or that reward that normal people get from building a career or neurotypical people get. I don't like the word normal, but they get from building those careers, and that can lead to a lot of mental self-evaluation in a negative way of like, man, why can't I stick a job? All these other people are killing it. They're doing this and I'm changing my jobs. I hate my job and change it. I'm really into this, man. I always do this. I'm always excited about my job. And then I end up quitting. What's wrong with me? You got ADHD, man. Like that's it. Don't blame yourself, you know, and she's done the right thing. She's gone to the psychiatrist. I'm sure it was a long process to get in and talk to somebody.
Well, she was already seeing someone for some other issues as well.
Like a psychologist?
A psychiatrist actually.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes it easier.
So she was already seeing that, and then it's just like, I've been, for her, it came down to I've been looking at memes about ADHD and I resonate with them.
Yeah.
And so she just asked her psychiatrist and he gave her a sheet and she went through and she scored really high on the sheet. So it's like, yeah, you've got ADHD.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much what it came down to for her.
Yes. Did she have to take school reports in or anything like that? Would they ask?
He did ask to see them.
Yes.
I think it was more just a curiosity rather than...
Yeah. I think the one difference that I would like to make with ADHD is for a lot of people, they can have periods where they feel disorganized or there's things that are a little bit chaotic, but ADHD is a neurological disorder. I'm putting that in quotation marks because I can talk about that in a little bit, but it would have been there from birth. Like that's the way that those receptors
for sure.
Have been from birth. So if you have been you're listening to this in the past and you're really disorganized now, but in the past you haven't been, it could be some other issues as well. So make sure you really can talk about those. I have a problem with self-diagnosis because, like I mentioned, my analogy was everybody might need to go to the toilet a couple of times a day, but if you're going 60 times a day and you've done it for your entire life, then that's where the problem is. So everybody can get distracted or have moments when they're having a week of being distracted, but if it's been your entire life and your existence, then that's when you need to change or have a look into that. But that's fantastic that your wife is actually on. If she's getting the same results that I am,
so far it seems like it.
It's like such a life-changing experience. What do you think are your biggest challenges with having a partner or living with someone with ADHD?
Well, there was the split of work. That was probably the
you mean like housework?
The majority of it, and housework and those sorts of things.
Yep,
and
have you got kids?
We've got one daughter.
Yep.
She's 3, so there's all of that as well.
Congratulations. Yep.
Oh, thank you. And so that was probably the majority of it, and just being able to that focus.
Yes. And it's
like just not jumping around, and even conversations, being able to maintain.
Does she cut you off a lot?
Serious conversation.
Will you be having a conversation and she's like, blah, 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 and be like, oh, but I didn't even finish my sentence there.
Well, not as much as I do to her.
Oh, okay. Have you looked at
Have you
yeah.
looked at
Well, that's what she's asking you now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty much the majority of it. Yeah.
Okay. And did you find it stressful? Like, what is the feeling like? Was there some, before you knew the diagnosis, was there some resentment, might not be the right word, but like, was there some frustration at like,
Oh,
come on,
for sure, yeah.
you got to help me out here. We're meant to be a team. We're raising a kid. Well, I'm doing this stuff just like you. Why can't you pull your 50%? Like, what's going on?
Look, it wasn't quite to that level because, as I said before, she's got other issues as well. So, we'd sort of dealt with that. But yeah, look, there is a degree of that. And, like the other day we gave the house a good clean and it was, amazing.
Yes. And was she able to do that without like being like, I'm done, I'm mentally spent?
Pretty much.
But pre-medication, let's say, because you know what's got to be done with ADHD, but you can't do it. And like, it would be, if I had to clean the house, right? Like a house is just, I would say, a normal house. It's not super clean like Noelle said her house is, but it's not dirty, right? It's not dirty. It's tidy. But if I had to do like, a couple loads of washing and do the dishes and stuff, I would be mentally spent. Like I would be done, where I would have to like lie down and just be like, I just need to zone out, please. I cannot function. Would your wife relate to that?
Yeah, it was pretty much like that. We'd work on it for a couple of hours or something, and then that would be it. And we just sort of do it in dribs and drabs as best we could, unless there was a rental inspection coming up, and then you're forced no matter what.
Yeah. Deadlines are a great motivator. Like,
pretty much.
I wonder if she was ever doing like assignments or anything like that, and it would be like starting him at midnight or all-nighters the night before, or if she ever had to do projects or anything, it'd be like a huge cram session.
I'm not sure, but probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the reason why I told you, Stu, that I have my suspicions about a couple of things about the neurodivergent brain. So hopefully one day I'll get my diagnosis. But it has happened to me that I want to jump back on something you said about dopamine. I think we discussed, Sam, you and I, we talked about it in the past. The neurodivergent brain, when we have dopamine, is also only when we start, and it's a delay, doing something we like, but everything else we don't get dopamine. Like if we do boring tasks, we don't get dopamine from it, even though neurotypical brains get dopamine from achieving things. Even though it was boring, they get dopamine from it. We don't really get that. So sometimes when I've been putting off a couple of things to do, if I start by doing something I like editing my podcast, publishing it, and then like you said in this episode, you get some likes, so you can see that you have listens. Ooh, the dopamine is kicking, and suddenly I'm doing my dishes. I'm cleaning everything around the house, and then I remember, I need to get this to the post office. So I get things I could have done through 3 weeks time, like a normal person. I don't want to say normal, but neurotypical person. I suddenly, because I have all this dopamine, I'm getting it done in 3 hours, but I'm talking about 20 different tasks. And then on my way back from the post office, I'm doing my groceries, and like all the things. And then the day after, I am depressed, like not depressed, but I have those symptoms then when I used to be depressed. I'm like, a lot of existential questions. And in the past, I was never able to put that together. I would only remember that I was not well when I wake up the day after. And I'm like, that's going to be one of those days where I'm very sad and nothing is working. And I'm very distracted, by the way. Like I can't focus on anything. Driving is terrible. And I was like, I don't know why I get those kind of days. And then by, listening to great podcasts or looking up online, I realized that usually it's a consequence of what you've done the day before. And I realized that hyper focus is amazing. And the day after, it's almost like I've lost all my focus and I'm useless.
A dopamine hangover.
Yeah, you've spent it all. You've spent it all from... that day. And now I'm just going to interject you. I don't know if your internet switched back to the other one. Sam's super clear. Noelle is like running on a potato.
Sorry. It's probably going in between, and there's nothing I can't do right now.
Oh, good. No dramas. I just thought I'd let you know from your end. I'm sure you can edit this bit out of the podcast, but yeah.
Thank you. So what kind of, to jump on Sam's question, if someone has a family member or friend who have ADHD, what do you think is best for them to understand the person first, and what's best to do to support them as well?
Sure. So there's a couple of different things. I say the number one thing that has made a difference in my life is an understanding of it's in today's society a negative. I don't know if disability is the right word, but it's not a good thing to have. It's not beneficial to have ADHD in today's world of how things, we're meant to have a career and work in one space and not move around, not get distracted, and those sorts of things. And I would say number one thing is a little bit of kindness and not blaming somebody. So that's why the wheelchair is a great analogy. Get up the stairs and do that. Well, can't you just move your legs and not be lazy? No, that person can't. Their legs don't work. No, that person can't. Their brain just doesn't work like that. And I know you can't see it and you can't imagine and experience what it's like because you have a normal functioning brain. It's just to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, I'll have to support you in some other ways. Imagine telling somebody who's colorblind, I can't explain to someone with colorblind what red looks like. You just don't know unless you have seen red, and you don't know what it's like to live with ADHD or ADD unless you have ADHD. So I
think in many ways it's probably worse than an external injury because at least you can pretend with that,
Yeah.
You can sit in a wheelchair and not use your legs and you can kind of get a bit of an understanding. But
yes.
when it's neurological,
people can't see it.
Nothing, you can't see it. You can't compare it.
Yeah, and it's also got a stigma attached to it as well. Like people think it's just these crazy 10-year-old boys who are jumping off the wall in school, and that couldn't be further from what the situation is like. And luckily podcasts like this do make a difference, and people can listen to this and be like, oh, that's actually, that resonates so much more with me. I'm not a kid throwing chalk at the board and being naughty. I was a pretty well-behaved kid at school, but there's so many things that ADHD, the diagnosis lines up with what my lifestyle and life has been like. In terms of actual things you can do to support them, little jobs, little tasks like making lists, medication has been correct for me, makes a huge difference for me and a lot of other people, but I'm not saying that that's right for everybody. I have no medical basis or training to say this is going to work. If you've got ADHD, do this. That's up for a neurologist and a psychiatrist to make those individual assumptions and discussions and things. So for me, medication has worked. It just little things can be really hard. I guess I don't know. Like in terms of, so how would your wife? How can you support your wife? Is that a good sort of question? I guess you would be asking Sam. Little lists, understanding, discussions. Maybe a big one is helping them get diagnosed in the first place, helping them fill those forms out, helping them get to the psychiatrist or the doctor to talk about it, showing them some questionnaires, having some discussions with them, because often you'll get information or, analysis paralysis of not knowing what to do. I can't even figure out any of those things because I'm so focused on just trying to get these dishes done that it's driving me nuts. I haven't got time for anything else. So, I think it's not so much a physical things that you can do. It's more of an understanding and a mindset of being there, talking to them, being able to communicate and accept what they might say. A lot of people wouldn't want to say, hey, my legs ain't working. Sorry, you got to push that mower around the yard. Oh, are you kidding me? What? But that's, if you're going to have a fight about who's pushing the mower every single week, then that's your alternative. Have a fight about it or accept it and go get some professional help and treatment for that, whatever that treatment may be.
Yeah. And anything you would like to add, Sam, for the audience? We're getting towards the end of the episode as well.
To be honest, like that's what Stu's saying there is pretty much what we've been doing as well. Like part of ADHD is that whole info dumping thing, and my wife is still doing that, which I don't have a problem with. It's like she's just explaining what's going on in her head and so forth, and she's been making little lists just to get her own thoughts in order as well. So it's just pretty much how we're functioning. And when she was first diagnosed, she actually sent me a video of this girl explaining ADHD and how the brain works and everything, and that was actually really helpful to me as well. It was like a 10-minute video or something. And just to sort of come in with an understanding.
That is a great point you've made. That is something, if anybody is living or supporting someone with ADHD, something that's made a huge difference for my wife is actually going and researching it. Not just what people think they know about it? Have you, because she had this discussion with one of her girlfriends about it, like, oh, this is, she's having a chat with a mate, and a friend said, well, have you actually researched it? Like, have you looked into that? And she went, oh, she hadn't even thought about doing that. So then once she went and researched it herself and was reading articles on it and, publications and stuff, some things made a lot more sense. It's not just me telling her, look, my legs don't work in this wheelchair. It was her able to see some publications and peer-reviewed articles, or look, even like you said, an Instagram video or whatever it is. Just do a bit of research if you don't have ADHD to have a look and what it's like. And you may be surprised. You might find yourself slightly more compassionate, better to support people who are living with ADHD. And yeah, it's just sharing that information. I think the more we understand each other and the more we can understand our differences, the better we can support each other.
That should be the conclusion of the episode. No, it was really great. Thanks as well for joining, Sam and Stu. It was really great to have you. I'm really glad, like, beside the podcast, beside content making, I'm really glad that as a person you're doing better and that you found the reason and that you acted on it.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't be more grateful and happy that this is the way that it's turned out. I feel very fortunate. I should say too, I know this is the end of the podcast, but I'm not upset that I have ADHD. I'm quite proud of it, because without my ADHD, I wouldn't have been able to hyper focus on drones for as long as I did, as working as hard as I could have on UAV futures to get me where I was able to, this is where I am today doing what I loved. If I was a neurotypical person, I would have been able to work on dribs and drabs. It'd be like a normal hobby for most people. But for me, it was like, I am focused on this. I couldn't do anything else but work on that. So without ADHD, I wouldn't be in this situation, which is why I say I don't know if that's why I use that quotation marks, disability. It's definitely not productive in today's society, but it does have some benefits as well. So if you do have ADHD, you sort of do have a superpower in terms of hyper-focus, but it comes at the detriment of other things as well. But no, thank you so much for the kind words and having me on. And if anybody else is watching this and you are struggling with something, it doesn't have to be ADHD. It could be depression or anxiety, or, like if you're thinking, man, I feel like my brain is a little bit neurodivergent, you do start learning. Don't just think, go out there and start reading some articles, go and talk to a doctor, go and talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or whoever it is that you need to speak to. Because if I hadn't have done that myself, if my wife hadn't have been discussing to ADHD with me and doing these little quizzes, I wouldn't be here. Like, I wouldn't have gotten the treatment. No one has picked it up. I've been going to psychologists for years, struggling with my depression and things. Like I mentioned at the start of this episode, I went to a psychologist because I wasn't sleeping. It's a huge thing with ADHD. Like, they are night owls. They will stay up all night because when we go to bed, our brains do not turn off, and it is so frustrating. You are just sitting there staring at the ceiling. Your eyes are closed, but you are thinking, oh, I'm going to build that. How do I put that drone up? I really like how the color of that tomato was turning out. Like, really, I don't want to all these different things, but it's like 4 of those things going on at the same time. And then so you will stay up because you don't want to go to bed and be bored. Being bored is like, it is terrible. So you're lying there, and you will stay up so late that then the next day, I bet your wife, Sam, has trouble getting out of. She was probably not a morning person, and she'll be a zombie. And because you've stayed up, you've spent all your energy, because you can only go to bed when you are so tired that your head hits the pillow when you fall asleep. And that's what a typical ADD or ADHD person experiences, because it is really tough to go to bed without it. So I forget what I was talking about, but go and get some help. To anybody who's listening, if you're neurodivergent, please try and do something about it, because no one else is going to do this for you. Maybe your partner, like my wife spoke to me about it, and then we could start that adventure. But if you are listening to this and you want to make the change and you would like to find the answers that you might be looking for, you need to take action on doing that. And you might not like the answers that you get. You might not, like me taking medication, the psychologist is me, you might not like what you find. Like, who you are has always been there, but you might find some different things about you. It doesn't mean they're going to be positive. There might be some things I don't like about myself that I'll have to accept, that I can't just blame things on ADHD or, my behavior on something. So if you want some answers, doesn't mean you like the answers, but you need to go and do something. So if you'd like to discover some things about yourself and you're feeling a little bit different or something's not quite right, you got to do the work, basically. But it's been an absolute pleasure, guys. So, like, it's my passion to talk about this stuff, and it's been so easy. I can't believe it's been an hour and a half that we've been talking about. I barely spoke about drones. Look, I better get that in ESC flight controller, blah 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 blah. But it's been a pleasure on here and discussing some things that are important to me, and I know they're important to a lot of people out there as well. And Sam, it was great to hear your wife finally getting diagnosed and hearing the other side of the coin, of someone who's supporting somebody with ADHD, because it's tough, right? It's hard.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, it puts strains on relationships. It's not easy. I know it puts strain on. Oh, well, look, it puts strain on my relationship anyway. Of being like, it would be easier without it. But look, this is the cards that we've been dealt.
Pretty much.
Yeah. If you didn't have ADHD, there's a lot of if, and to an extent, Stu, you wouldn't maybe have UAV futures where it is, and I wouldn't know Sam. So I'm glad you have ADHD.
Me too. Hey, it's all crazy coincidences like that. Yes.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in today. For those who have watched, and also for everybody listening, this podcast is available on all platforms. Like I said quickly during the break when we were welcoming Sam, I have Patreon. Stewart has Patreon, and Sam has Patreon. So I'll put all the links in the show notes. And thanks for listening to this episode. I've really had a blast talking about, yes, a little bit of FPV, and yes, a lot of mental health, but that's also what I really like talking about, and Stu is a great advocate for it, in my opinion. And thanks Sam for joining as well.
Yeah, no worries.
And we will see you and hear about you in 2 weeks. Happy flying, and bye-bye.
No, it's happy flying, guys. Be kind to each other, and most importantly, be kind to yourself.